Hello! In this video, I would like to introduce my new book, which was published at the beginning of this year 2024. The book's title is Cultural Racism: Theories, Conspiracies, and Literature. It was published by the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies, which is the most important and prestigious research center in the Middle East and North Africa. The book is written in Arabic, my mother tongue, the language I love. It was peer-reviewed by a scientific committee before publication. This is the book. The research question of the book is the transformation of racism in recent decades from biological to cultural racism. Biological racism was based on the assumption that there are human races with fixed and inherited characteristics, fundamentally different from each other, that dictate different conditions for peoples in political, economic, and social aspects. Today's cultural racism assumes that human cultures have fixed and inherited characteristics, and they are also fundamentally different from each other, that dictate different conditions for peoples in political, economic, and social aspects. So the word culture has replaced the word race and is used today in the same way. Yes. Before diving into a controversial topic like this, it is necessary to define cultural racism accurately. According to my definition, cultural racism is based on two pillars. The first is the identification of essential fixed characteristics of a particular culture. When we assume that a particular culture has essential fixed characteristics. The second is the generalization of these characteristics to all individuals born into this culture, or most of them. So, when you say that this human group possesses certain characteristics, attributes, and to consider them to be inherent, static, and eternal, you are presenting a racist claim. It does not matter much whether you think these characteristics come from race, culture, religion, or language, or whatever. I presented this transformation in three applied chapters. The first deals with political science theories, the second with conspiracy theories, and the third with literature, mostly novels. Before entering the applied chapters, it was necessary to preface with two theoretical chapters. The first chapter included defining the basic concepts like culture, essentialism, prejudices. I paused a bit on culturalism due to its deep connection to the subject. Culturalism is the approach that gives significant importance to culture in explaining historical and social phenomena. More operationally, culturalism states that the conditions of a nation or group are bad or good because the culture of that nation or group is bad or good. It's an easy and common explanation, but not really a scientific explanation. It was also necessary to briefly recount or retell the history of racisms, not one racism. There were and there are pre-racial racisms manifested in tribal fanaticism, the caste system, and geographic racism. While biological racism emerged in the mid-18th century when biologists transferred the term race from biology to social and human studies. This was the most dangerous type of racism, reaching its peak with the Nazi regime in Germany. Then there are post-racial racisms. They do not depend on race. Post-racial racisms, which do not adopt the concept of race but distinguish between humans based on other criteria like culture, religion, language, lifestyle, for example. Common examples today include Islamophobia, anti-immigrants attitudes, and the identity politics adopted by far-right and alternative right groups. Now I come to the applied chapters. Political theory chapter, I began with Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis interpreted history in a Manichaean way, presenting history as a continuous struggle between forces of life and good on one side and forces of darkness and evil on other side. The first group is represented by what he calls the Judeo-Christian world, and the second by what he calls the Islamic world. Then Samuel Huntington, with his Clash of Civilization, which divided the world into naturally conflicting civilizations defined by their main culture or religion, because Huntington reduces civilization to culture, and culture to religion, and then religion to a few aspects or attributes, or you can say cliches and prejudices, using them to interpret and predict international politics after the end of the Cold War. I also paused at Francis Fukuyama's The End of History. I do like Fukuyama. He's a brilliant scholar. He's a must. He's a big teacher. But I disagree with him in this book because he interprets economic inequalities within each country and between the global north and global south as caused by cultural differences, overlooking or ignoring 5 centuries of colonial legacy and the exploitative relations that are the essence of the neoliberal globalized capitalist system today. It should be clarified here that I did not describe any of these theories as cultural racist theories, but they in fact paved the way for more dangerous conspiracy theories, as we will see. Uh, like what Oriana Fallaci presented in The Force of Reason. She saw the migration of non-European, specifically Muslims, to Europe as a sophisticated plot, an ancient historical conspiracy aiming at occupying Europe, then Arabizing or Islamizing it. This supposed conspiracy is going on with the collaboration of Arab leaders on one side and the European politicians on other sides, whom she sees as traitors and betrayals. The phenomenon of migration has scientific explanation and various theories in the science of demography, which Fallaci either has not heard of or did not want to acknowledge. After Fallaci came Pat Yawar, who developed this claim into the Eurabia conspiracy theory. Eurabia alleged an Arab European Muslim Christian conspiracy against Jews. And like Fallaci, Yawar or Bat Yawar connects unrelated things, unrelated events, and unrelated phenomena to wave the threads of an incredible conspiracy. As with all conspiracy theories, there is no logic, no reason, and especially no scientific method. Regarding the chapter dedicated to literature, the topic was vast, too vast, and deserved a book of its own, of course. I studied some novels under the title The Migration Dystopia, including Jean Raspail's The Camp of Saints and Michel Houellebecq's Submission. Both novels address the same topic, describing the invasion of Europe by non-European peoples and ethnicities. The first novel belongs to explicit biological racism, while the second belongs to implicit cultural racism, acute form of racism not punishable by law. I also studied a series of novels under the title Islamic terror novels. Those were published after the September 11 attacks. At that time, the Islamophobia market needed products to satisfy the reader's thirst for more images of Islamic violence, oppression, and terrorism, which also served the US foreign policy to justify the so-called war on terror. Most of the novels I reviewed are best described as commercial products, not to mention the superficial approach to a complex phenomenon like terrorism. Finally, why is cultural racism a dangerous phenomenon? Or why did I write this book? First, it is it is not the book cultural racism. It is used to discriminate against people who are different, foreigners, immigrants, minorities in many parts of the world. Second, it is used by populist far-right politicians seeking power. They often have no political program other than racist agitation against immigrants, people of color, and minorities, blaming them for political and economic crises. They thereby attract voters from groups harmed by globalization. Third, it is used by dictatorial regimes claiming that democracy and human rights, some dictatorial regimes, claiming that democracy and human rights do not suit all peoples. The dictator today says, "We have a cultural particularity that must be respected. Our people are not fit or ready for democracy. They only suit dictatorship and violations of their rights and dignity." Fourth, it is used by the great powers that support these dictatorial regimes. They are not embarrassed to support a bloody dictator, but justify it by saying that this brutal regime suits the culture or the nature of this nation. At the end, modern science has proven that the claims of biological racism are unfounded, as there are no distinct races, and genetic diversity within each alleged race is about 85%. Today, it is necessary to say that the claims of cultural racism are also unfounded, as all cultures are historically formed from previous cultures. They are Creole cultures, Creole cultures, simply. So, claims of cultural purity and superiority are as mythical as claims of racial purity and superiority. That is what I wanted to say in this book. And thank you for listening.